Welcome back to another Welcome back to another opportunity to learn, grow, unlearn, and evolve so that we may sustainably live in that place of peace and power within our core, our true selves. And today I want to go right at the core of what's underneath our anxiety so that we can get clarity and awareness on that and then slowly dig up the roots that are keeping that anxiety and that fear alive so we can let go of that and bring in the new. So, to really bring this to you, I'm going to share a little bit about my story. When I first started to experience that debilitating anxiety back in 2014, when I didn't know what was going on, why I didn't know why I was feeling the way that I was feeling, and if it was going to end because it was also new to me, I started to have this deep desire to understand what was going on, and therefore I slowly made a commitment to understanding myself, how my mind worked, and what anxiety was. I started reading books, I started going to seminars, I started doing therapy, and eventually I started doing coaching. And with that, I started to uncover within myself and through my teachings that underneath our anxiety are core fears. Another way to describe a core fear is it's a fear that is beneath our core beliefs, beneath our habits, beneath our perspectives, beneath how we are showing up in the world. So imagine a puppet and a puppet master, right? The core fear is the one pulling the strings on how we're showing up, and we are the puppet, right? But what we want to do is become aware of the puppet master so that we could let go of that unhealthy fear that's controlling how we're showing up and show up from a much more powerful, peaceful, and conscious place out of love, right? So understanding the core fear and understanding that that's what's behind the anxiety will allow us to have clarity on what we need to work on to liberate ourselves. And that is why anxiety really isn't a bad thing. Obviously, it's deeply painful, right? I'm right here with you to say that. But anxiety is a symptom that is pointing directly at what we need to work through in order to feel better, to feel in our power, to feel our best. So that's why anxiety gets a bad rap, but when we really look into it, there's a lot behind it that we could work on to let it go and bring in capacity for the new. So to give you a deeper understanding of these core fears, I will explain my own experience. So my core fears and the core fears that I have seen very common within teachings as well as within my clients as well as within myself are number one, the fear of not being enough or measuring up in yourself or with other people. And number two, the fear of not being loved. We're social animals, so being loved, being seen, being heard, connection is deep at our core and within our needs. So these two fears are really going to rupture the foundation that we stand on to feel confident in the way that we go about life, to feel at ease and within love in the way that we go about life. So these two core fears, mainly the fear of not being enough, which plays into the fear of not being loved, were deep within my own experience. And the way that they showed up in my life were through an assortment of other fears and other behaviors. So the fear of not being enough in myself showed up as a deep fear of committing suicide because I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to show up for myself when I got anxious. I was afraid of not being able to find the support or do the work that I need, aka a lack of trust in myself because of that fear. So a deep fear of committing suicide, which I was able to work through. Number two, a deep fear of abandonment, feeling like somebody was going to find out who my true self was and they were going to be disappointed and they were going to leave me, right? Like they were going to see, oh, Marcello actually, like, he's not a good guy, right? Or he's just, he's inferior. I don't want to spend time with him. He's not enough. He doesn't measure up. I'm going to leave him, right? Whether it be with friends, whether it be with family, whether it be with partners, right? Fear of abandonment came from the fear of not being enough. And then other one is the fear of getting sick, right? The fear that I, again, just like the committing suicide, wasn't going to be able to show up for myself. I wasn't going to be able to get the help that I needed. I wasn't going to be able to allow myself the space and allow myself the work to really find the answers for myself and show up for myself the way that I needed to. And so what this did is it brings me into this deeply fearful, controlling, and distrustful state, so that I am constantly looking at the world through the lens of fear, through the lens of not being good enough. So the way that this actually showed up in my life is I constantly, and I've recognized this with great enlightenment or illumination over the past few months as a result of a relationship, that this fear of not being enough had me constantly scanning my relationships, my friendships, to see if they were recognizing that I wasn't enough and if they were going to leave. And so I would constantly be in my head within my relationships because I was constantly scanning the environment to see if I was safe to allow myself to fully show up to this relationship. And so I was never really in my heart. I was never in an open heart where I could truly connect with this person. And it would take me a long time to get to that place because I had to feel really safe after I scanned the relationship to see if it was one that I was okay to blossom into, open up into. And this is just one example of how this fear was totally controlling the way that I was able to see the world. And I have not even been conscious of this for a very long time, and I became even more conscious of this within just the past few months, which just goes to show that we're constantly evolving, we're constantly learning, and you and I are doing it together. So this is an example of the core fear at play. And you might be able to, as I'm just talking here, be able to understand, oh, maybe this is my core fear, or maybe this is my core fear. Now, in another video, one that I made on cognitive behavioral therapy, I talked about something called the funnel. And the funnel is something that I learned in therapy when I was doing cognitive behavioral therapy, where I listed out the places that I was showing up to life from fear, the things that I was afraid of, right? Like the things that I just mentioned, the fear of committing suicide, at the time the fear of having cancer because I had a skin rash, and other fears that would play up too. And as I listed out these fears, right, I started to dig deeper. Once I had the first fear, I said, what's below this? And what's below this? And slowly peeling back the onion to understand what's at the core of this experience, of this fear. And slowly you work down the funnel and you get to what the core fear is for you. And being able to do this practice, and it's great to feel supported in this practice because it can be very triggering when we're listing out all of our fears, to be supported. And then once you can have that illumination of your fears and what's beneath them, you can really start to dig deep and again, dig out those roots of this plant that is actually a weed in your mind that is not serving you. And that is where we start to dig that out, and we can start to bring in the new, start to bring in the things that we are consciously choosing to have in our life, so that instead of coming from a fear-based mindset, we're coming from that love-based mindset, from the heart, the union between the body, the mind, the spirit, all of that being brought together instead of just being locked up here because of the fear and wanting to be in control. So as we start to work with this fear, the core fear, the other fears, and bring that illumination, we start to work through the conditioning that we received when we were young children, when we were adolescents, from authority figures, society, parental figures, whatever it was, to get into that true self, that authentic self that is within, that knows what it needs, what it wants, what it loves, what it enjoys. That is the essence of doing this work, so that that's where we can come into that peace, that's where we can come into that ease, that clarity, and that power. And so that is the practice here. And just to really bring it all together, understanding our fears, the topical fears, writing them down, journaling on them, becoming curious about them, and looking at them and writing them down in an objective way. And then being able to ask ourselves, what causes this fear? What's underneath this fear? Why this fear? And starting to bubble even deeper down. And that's where we get into the core fear. None of us are broken. We are all enough. We are all loved. And often it's the conditioning and then the mind that perpetuate the belief that actually we're not enough. And that's where we're starting to release this and come into ourselves, have better self-talk, be able to truly connect with each other from the heart, be kinder, be honest, know what our needs are, know what our values are, and we show up to the world in an entirely different way. And that is where we start to become the conscious creators of our lives instead of just being caught on that autopilot, instead of just being led by the puppet master of that fear, of those fears. And something I just like to say in all of these videos now is anxiety is simply a portal. Triggers are simply a portal into our own evolution, into that peace and power that lies beyond the trigger. They're all opportunities to grow. They're all opportunities to be at our most peaceful, happiest, joyful, most fulfilled, powerful selves. So if this lands for you, that's incredible. If it takes a little bit of time, that's natural too. It took me years to fully digest this, and like I said, I'm still digesting it and learning new things within these past few months. Feel free to ask me questions. If you want to drop them here in the comments, or if you want to reach out to me privately, you could reach out to me on Instagram. I'm there most frequently. And we can have a conversation about this, really start to bring this together so that you could start to live in a much easier way of life instead of being caught up in the fear and what makes me visualize like a jail cell in the mind where we're caught behind the bars of the fear. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. I also would love to share with you that every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, I hold a group meditation where we get to facilitate the growth of that self-awareness so that we can really start to illuminate the things that aren't serving us, so that we can create some more relaxation in our lives, some more ease in our lives, and to do it in community. Because at the end of the day, my motto with my YouTube channel is let's learn, grow, and evolve, not just alone, but together. And so every Sunday morning is an opportunity to be together in that learning, that unlearning, that growing, that evolution. And the last thing is I'm super happy to share this with you, is I am now offering coaching, one-on-one coaching, so that we could really bring the things that we're talking about here together in a really personalized approach so that you can feel fully seen in what your experiences are, and you could have a lot of these things directed totally at your experience and also at your objectives, what you want to get rid of, what you want to feel. And that is, I'm super happy to be able to offer that now because it has been a huge tool in my journey, coaching. So feel free to reach out to me for any of this stuff. Let's have a conversation. A like, a subscription, all goes a long way, of course. And if I don't see you in the comments, then I will see you in the next video. Much, much love to you.